Sometimes taxpayer waste is so large and rampant you can stumble across it without even trying. That's what happened to the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. On a trip to Afghanistan, he happened upon a fleet of abandoned military planes. His questions took him down the rabbit hole where hundreds of millions of your tax dollars were spent on a giant boondoggle that turned out to be worthless. Anyone flying through Kabul International Airport in Afghanistan's capital city the past couple of years might have seen this odd scene, a fleet of abandoned military planes parked off to the side.
We actually asked the question, what are those airplanes? Because you would see them right next to the main air terminal in Kabul. They were all jumbled together with trees and grass growing between them.
Inspector General John Sopko saw the planes on his trip to Afghanistan in November of 2013 to investigate waste of U.S. tax dollars. Nobody seemed eager to answer his questions, so he took matters into his own hands.
I basically threatened to just walk across the tarmac and said, if you're going to arrest me, do it, but I'm certain it'll be front page New York Times. So my staff and I went over there, and then they briefed us on us and told us the story.
The story wasn't pretty. John Michael, commanding general for NATO Air Training Command in Afghanistan, explained the U.S. had bought 20 of the Italian-built G222s in 2008.
It's what we call the G222. It was a two-engine cargo aircraft that we purchased for the Afghan Air Force. Cost approximately $400 million, but with the total package of parts, spare parts, and whatever, it probably is going to be closer to $600 million when we finally do an accounting for it.
This video was taken from inside a G222 as it took off from Kabul. Despite the hundreds of millions of dollars the U.S. military spent, the G222 turned out to be ill-suited for Afghanistan's dusty conditions. The planes required constant maintenance and spare parts.
Actually, some pilots have told us that when they flew the airplanes in, parts fell off the airplane as it landed. They were called death traps. We couldn't train the Afghans to use the planes because the planes weren't airworthy. And ultimately, they were abandoned at the airport in Kabul, and that's how we found them.
Within months of Sopko beginning an investigation, the military officially put a bullet in the G222 program, claiming the Italian contractor had failed to generate a sufficient number of fully mission-capable aircraft. The contractor argued it was exceeding program objectives and was proud of its work. A separate probe by the Defense Department Inspector General blamed NATO and the military for failing to effectively manage the program. The fleet needed $200 million in spare parts to fly, and some critical parts weren't even available. But Sopko had more questions.
Why did we buy these planes to start with, and who bought them? So we have been looking at who is accountable. Now, we have an ongoing criminal investigation, so I can't really tell you too much more about that, but we're trying to find out who and why we purchased these death traps for the Afghan Air Force, which they never used.
But this tale of taxpayer waste was about to take one more turn. This video, shot by a government contractor, shows the last few G222s being towed away from the Kabul airfield. Where were they going, and what happened to these planes after they quietly disappeared? The Inspector General decided to dig deeper. In October of 2014, Sopko discovered the military had scrapped the airplanes and sold the leftovers to an Afghan construction company for 6 cents a pound. A $500 million investment of U.S. tax dollars whittled down to a measly $32,000. Major Bradley Avotz confirmed that the planes had been destroyed and explained it was to minimize impact on drawdown of U.S. forces in Afghanistan.
Who made the decision? Why did we purchase an aircraft that is airworthy and was never going to be used?
But you wouldn't have even known about these planes if you hadn't stumbled across it at the airport.
Absolutely. That's approximately $600 million for 20 planes that don't work, never worked, couldn't be used, were poorly maintained, and were eventually turned into scrap.
The Inspector General says the criminal investigation into the G222 program is ongoing. We'll keep you posted. Right now, this very second, people are busily editing away on the website Wikipedia at a rate of more than 10 edits per second. Over 5 million English language articles are on Wikipedia, with 1,000 added daily. But there's a dark side to Wikipedia you probably don't know about. The promise of accurate, neutral articles and privacy for contributors is often just a mirage, according to two insiders. They say they've been left battle-scarred after troubling personal encounters with the world's most popular encyclopedia. We begin today with their story. It's billed as the encyclopedia anyone can edit, but for many, it's the opposite.
Just in the past 4 hours, 500 IP addresses and users have been blocked from editing Wikipedia.
Greg Coase is among the blocked, banned, he says, for challenging Wikipedia policies. More on that in a moment. In 2012, Coase helped start an opposing website called Wikipediocracy to expose what he calls Wikipedia's misinformation, defamation, and general nonsense. So Wikipedia does censor users?
Absolutely. In a given day, Wikipedia administrators typically are blocking about 1,000 different IP addresses.
1,000 a day?
1,000 a day, yes.
When Coase ran afoul of Wikipedia, he was drawn into an unseen cyber world, one where he says volunteer editors dole out punishment and retaliation, privacy is violated, and special interests control information. Most people don't know what?
Wikipedia is often edited by people who have an agenda.
To understand how, it helps to start with the Wikipedia most know and love. Co-founded in 2001 by Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger, Wikipedia boasts 37 million plus articles in 291 languages. Research experts like Mary Frances Forcier count on Wikipedia.
I think it's user-friendly. I think it's easy to use. It has a very appealing visual interface. And I do think that having the sources at the bottom of the page is really important.
Wikipedia's promise to volunteer editors, anonymity and privacy. To readers, unbiased articles. But there were conflicts in this encycloputopia from the start. Co-founder Sanger quickly broke away. He later told a reporter, "People that I would say are trolls sort of took over. The inmates started running the asylum." Coase says Wikipedia's inmates include some volunteer editors with an axe to grind or serious conflicts of interest.
Sometimes editors will have very aggressive attitudes about what they want to appear in a Wikipedia article.
They can stop opposing opinions.
Exactly, exactly.
Even opposing facts.
Oftentimes, yes.
When volunteer editors disagree, and they often do, it leads to edit wars fought out on Wikipedia's talk and discussion pages.
So there's drama on Wikipedia just about every day. You just need to know where to go and look for it.
Edit wars fill thousands of pages deep inside Wikipedia with dialogue that ranges from civil to childish and hostile, like this argument that Coase read us.
He has violated NPA, which means no personal attacks, by telling someone they are inferior and to accept their station in life. He wrote, "I refuse to be blocked. I am not blocked. You can pretend that you blocked me all you like, but someone who is right can never be blocked. It is impossible."
In Wikipedia's world, the ruling authorities are the hundreds of volunteer editors who've reached the most powerful editing status. They're called administrators, known only by their pseudonyms or usernames. They always win the edit wars. The more edits you make, the longer you've been making them, the more power you're going to have.
Yes.
But what happens when powerful editors improperly control content?
You'll have different people with a particular scientific point of view, and they'll edit and modify Wikipedia so that its articles kind of reflect that point of view.
Wikipedia has given names to bad behavior. Malicious editing is vandalism. Editing for personal or financial gain is paid or covert editing. Wikipedia discourages both, but they happen all the time. Two trusted Wikipedia officials were exposed running businesses that covertly edited Wikipedia for PR clients. Interests for Sony, the CIA, the Vatican, Barack Obama, and John McCain all reportedly have been caught secretly editing their own Wikipedia pages to their advantage. And anonymous Wikipedia editors maintain a stranglehold on selected topics. Coase demonstrates with the case of Morgellons. The Mayo Clinic calls it an unexplained skin disorder characterized by sores, but the Wikipedia page dismisses Morgellons as a delusional belief.
So I'm just going to make a little comment here that
Let's see what happens when Coase adds a research footnote that differs with that narrative.
They can just go to this link, and you get the abstract of the study right there.
In less than an hour, Coase edit disappears.
I see that our edit to Morgellons was reverted after about 38 minutes or so.
It was reverted by an administrator who is anonymous but for his username. If you know where to look, it's possible to see the many Wikipedia topics the same editor worked hard to control.
It seems to me that this is someone who is either involved with the medical profession or the pharmaceutical profession. They probably have an agenda to discredit or to suppress alternative medicines or things of that nature.
One study found mistakes in 9 out of 10 Wikipedia medical entries. Millions of dollars can depend on how an idea or product is portrayed within these computer pages. That may be why Wikipedia editors reportedly linked to the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca got caught posting negative material on competitors' pages and adding promotional material to their own. Coase sees himself as an equalizer. His business helps clients, including supposed victims of unfair edits, navigate Wikipedia's unbridled landscape. Wikipedia banned him for violating the policy against paid editing, and when Coase criticized the policy and continued under a borrowed account, Wikipedia editors targeted him. They went to great lengths to track him using inside information and computer addresses. They researched where Coase grew up and traced his movements all the way to Orlando, Florida, where he was making edits while on vacation.
Wikipedia editors that you didn't know at the time were tracking your movements and speculating that you went home for Thanksgiving.
That's absolutely correct.
He only discovered that he was being tracked because somebody leaked these internal Wikipedia discussions about him.
And then somebody chimed in and said, looks like someone went home for Thanksgiving to visit mom and dad. So, you think you're editing with, some degree of privacy, but if they want to, they can really start to investigate.
Wales has publicly feuded with Coase over the paid editing policy, but declined our interview requests. Wikimedia Foundation, the nonprofit that runs Wikipedia, and the Wikipedia editors we asked also offered no comment for this report. Another paid editor, Mike Wood, says his confrontation with Wikipedia was life-changing. Like Coase, Wood publicly criticized Wikipedia's policies on editing for pay, which he did while on breaks as a casino inspector, until one day when his boss called him in for a meeting.
He says, we received an email and a phone call from the Wikimedia Foundation telling us that you are using our servers to edit Wikipedia. He said Wikipedia, meaning the Wikimedia Foundation, put a hard block on our servers, so now no one is allowed to access Wikipedia from our job site.
That was enough to get Wood fired.
It was a huge violation of privacy. They put so much pressure on my employer by blocking access to Wikipedia, by telling them what was going on. Just the embarrassment, the potential embarrassment alone of what the Wikimedia Foundation pressured my employer with was enough for the employer to terminate me.
Despite the controversies, Wikipedia has many devoted followers. Forseer is with the Loudoun County Public Library in Virginia. She says Wikipedia is a valuable research tool when used properly.
It's accessible, it's in language that everyone understands, and it does provide you the kind of source information that can lead you to scholarly works, encyclopedias, reference works, and primary sources that can really help you out.
But the next time you visit the world's most popular encyclopedia, you may want to consider some advice you won't find within its pages.
When you read Wikipedia, you have to be aware that the people who are writing it, who don't identify themselves, who don't necessarily have any credentials to be writing in the subject matter that they've chosen to write in, are very often pushing an agenda.
There is no privacy. If they want to know who you are, where you're editing from. They have that, and they can check it, and they will. Do not step in front of the train, because they will run you over.
Coase and Wood still edit Wikipedia for paid clients. And here's an inside tip. On any Wikipedia page, if you want to see what an editor's removed, you can click the tab that says View History and see for yourself. Sometimes the most interesting material is what's been deleted by those guarding the page. Wikimedia has indicated it makes an effort to prevent biased articles, and when a page is disputed, sometimes editors insert warning notices to alert readers. As soon as you set a passcode on your Apple iPhone, it sets off a feverish encryption process. If a hacker tries to get data off the memory chips, it just looks like a scrambled mess. But the same feature that's protecting your security is keeping the FBI locked out of any secrets held in a terrorist's iPhone after he killed 14 in California last December. A federal judge has ordered Apple to create software to unlock the iPhone. Apple is fighting the order. Today, we have an extraordinary story that predates the Apple conundrum. In fact, it predates what most understand to be the beginning of widespread surveillance of U.S. citizens after 9/11. In October of 1997, Joseph Nashio was CEO of Qwest Communications, a major phone company out west. One of his vice presidents told him he had an unexpected visitor.
He came in and he said, Joe, we have a general downstairs who wants to meet you, which I thought was pretty surprising because, generals just don't drop by. It was a 3-star.
Who is the general?
His name is classified, believe it or not. Who it was, I'm still not allowed to disclose.
The general was from a U.S. intelligence agency interested in paying Qwest to use its cutting-edge global fiber optics network for classified programs. But to learn more, Nashio first needed a top-secret security clearance.
I had my clearance by January of 1998. We received that contract shortly thereafter, and that led to us working with multiple intelligence agencies.
Nashio's job as CEO of Qwest became steeped in a secretive world of classified meetings and clandestine government contracts. He's still barred from saying exactly what the projects involved.
So you could either put equipment in, you could either monitor, there's a whole bunch of things you can do.
As head of a telecom company, you were meeting with top spy agency people?
Yes. What I'm allowed to say that I worked with 4 clandestine security agencies and senior government officials.
For several years, Nashio says, government requests to monitor and surveil Qwest customers came with proper legal authority and brought Qwest lots of cash.
The telecom companies, they make a lot of money off these contracts when they cooperate with the intel agencies.
But it's all done in a classified way that nobody sees it. So yes, we made money. And again, as a CEO of a public corporation, that's good business besides being patriotic.
Was it hundreds of millions of dollars over the years?
Oh, easily, yes.
The mutually beneficial relationship continued until February 27, 2001, when Nashio says he got an astonishing request at a meeting at the headquarters for the National Security Agency, or NSA.
I fly into Washington. My guys meet me, take me to a SCIF that we have that's in Maryland. A SCIF is one of those rooms that are designed to specs that you can't have eavesdropping on. When I grew up and we used to watch Maxwell Smart on television, it was the cone of silence thing. I go to there, get briefed, and then at the end, which was very surprising, a new request is made of us.
By whom?
By someone across the table. I was supposed to meet with Admiral Hayden that day. He didn't show up at the last minute, which should have put yellow flashing lights in my...
He was head of the NSA at the time.
He was head of the NSA. He was the 3-star head of the NSA, who Bush later appoints to be 4 stars and runs the CIA. So when that request came, I was a little bit surprised. It didn't sound right to me. As a matter of fact, it sounded very wrong to me.
What was the request?
Well, it was a request to do something that, under the law, I didn't believe the foreign intelligence agencies, particularly NSA, were authorized to do unless they had a FISA warrant.
A FISA warrant would come from the secretive Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and would authorize the NSA to do something that was otherwise illegal for it to do, collect data in the U.S.
And you can't say exactly what they asked.
No, that remains classified. Something was asked. I asked if they had a FISA warrant. They said it wasn't required. I thought that was pretty strange.
If there was no warrant, he says he asked if the White House had given executive authority for the project.
They said they wasn't required.
This was under President Bush.
Yes, this was under President Bush, and this is prior to 9/11. So I said we couldn't do it, and we wouldn't do it.
The 9/11 terrorist attacks are often cited as justification for the government's controversial programs to collect information on Americans without court warrants. But the NSA proposition to Quest was nearly 7 months before 9/11, according to Nashio.
After that meeting, there were repeated requests over the next several months. And I continued to answer the requests by saying, look, show me legal authority, and we'll be happy to do it. Okay, but I can't do it without legal authority. You know, I can be sued civilly, but the government can't.
How did you begin to understand that you were becoming odd man out?
I think it was June 5th of 2001, about 4 months later, and I'm sitting next to Dick Clark, and Dick leans over to me and he says, kind of incidental to the purpose of the meeting, Joe, you know that contract that you thought you guys were getting? And he named it. I said, yeah. He says, well, it's going to someone else. And I was a little bit surprised because we had been working on this a long time.
Dick, or Richard Clark, was President Bush's chief counterterrorism advisor. He didn't respond to our request for comment. He's shown here in 2002 giving Nashio a presidential certificate. In this photo, Nashio and other CEOs are shown with Clark being sworn in on the president's National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee. Nashio says that contract Quest wasn't getting after all dealt a major blow.
A valuable contract for the government?
Yeah, we're talking in the hundreds of millions. Okay, we're not talking 10 million. We're talking big deal contract. Well, what ends up over the next several months is about 4 or 5 contracts we thought we were going to get, we never got.
Nashio viewed it as reprisal for his refusal to take part in what he viewed as an illegal program.
It was in excess of 500 million that I was counting on that didn't come in that year in 2001 alone.
Nashio left Quest the following year without mending that fence. Then, 3 years later, in August of 2005, he got a call. The Justice Department was investigating him for insider trading of Quest stock 4 years earlier. Nashio claims the government was targeting him in retaliation, something the government strongly denies. His defense hinged on telling the jury how his relationship with the spy agencies had gone sour. But there was a catch. It was all classified. Nashio lost his case.
I'm barred under the law from bringing any of it up. I'm barred from the contracts. I'm barred from naming the agencies. I'm barred from naming who I was with. I was even barred from saying the meeting on February 27th happened.
Some of it would later become public. About the time of Nashio's indictment, the government's controversial programs were revealed for the first time.
This is a highly classified program that is crucial to our national security.
The New York Times reported the NSA had been using phone companies to collect private information of U.S. citizens without court warrants.
The NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default.
Later, NSA contractor Edward Snowden blew the whistle in this explosive interview with The Guardian. He exposed the Obama administration's vast expansion of data collection.
I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
It was Snowden's example of a federal judge that hit home with Nashio. By then, he was serving a 4.5-year prison sentence. In a bizarre twist, the judge in Nashio's case, Edward Nottingham, was soon embroiled in scandal, accused of soliciting prostitutes and allegedly asking one to lie to investigators. He resigned and apologized, but wasn't prosecuted. After his dealing with the spy agencies, Nashio wonders if they knew about Nottingham's private scandal. Could that have been held over the judge's head as he ruled for the government against Nashio?
Look, I think the intelligence agencies in that time frame were wiretapping government officials, judges. I mean, they were just monitoring everything.
Government officials call Nashio a convicted felon whose speculation can't be believed. Nottingham firmly denies anyone spoke to him about his personal scandals during Nashio's trial. An appeals panel overturned Nashio's conviction, saying Judge Nottingham erred in a key ruling, but the guilty verdict was upheld on appeal. President Bush's NSA and CIA chief Michael Hayden, a Nashio point of contact back then, didn't respond to our request for comment, but has championed the controversial surveillance.
That everything that the agency has done has been lawful. It's been briefed to the appropriate members of Congress. That the only purpose of the agency's activities is to preserve the security and the liberty of the American people. And I think we've done that.
President Obama also defends the government's mass data collection.
When it comes to telephone calls, nobody is listening to your telephone calls. That's not what this program's about.
My advice to people is put nothing on the internet that you wouldn't take a billboard out on 42nd Street and Broadway and publicize. You have your bank records, your health records, you're looking at porn sites, your illegal dating or whatever you're doing is all known.
By the government.
And by their agents. Now let's remember who the agents are. The agents are the telephone companies, the agents are the banks, the agents are Apple, the agents are Google, the agents are Facebook. They're all involved.
What do you tell Apple if they were to call you and ask you for advice?
I would have said, keep this very quiet and cooperate, because you're going to lose this one in court, and what's going to happen to you when this is all over is for the next 5 years of your life, every federal agency that has some jurisdiction on you is going to be crawling all over Apple. And that's what they do.
Nashio's conviction was overturned on appeal in a decision that found Judge Nottingham made key errors. But the government got the conviction reinstated by a split judges panel. A hearing on the Apple case is scheduled for next month. This week, the CEO of Wells Fargo was grilled on Capitol Hill over a multi-year scheme that enriched the bank by illegally opening 2 million sham accounts without customers' permission. It seems to be an ongoing theme, big banks behaving badly. A few years back, it was Lehman Brothers, the world's fourth largest bank, until it got caught up in the mortgage crisis. Today, we hear the disturbing story of what happened to 3 women who worked for Lehman Brothers and were calling the crash 11 years ago. These are the allegations from their court case.
Greed is what happened. It's the almighty dollar. And once that comes into play, people lose all consciousness and sense of right.
What these women saw coming was the mortgage crisis that would plunge America into a deep recession in 2008. But their story starts 3 years earlier at B&C Mortgage in Sacramento, California. Starting in 2005, Linda Weeks noticed something fishy. She says loan officers from other companies began submitting loan applications to B&C with documents that were obviously doctored.
I found 5 in one day from the same company.
5 notices that you thought fraud had been committed?
That had falsified documentation in the loans in reference to income, bank statements, and job information. One of the 5 files, they used the same W-2, just changed the information on it.
Colleen Colombo says she saw the same thing.
Information was whited out and then retyped in and copied.
They ended up taking bank statements, and instead of showing the actual deposit, maybe it was 1,000, it was now 11,000, or whatever they needed to do.
They didn't know it then, but it was happening nationwide. Loan officers allegedly falsifying documents to qualify people for loans they probably couldn't afford.
Banks have conditioned us to trust them.
The story was told in The Big Short, a movie released last December.
The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail.
The housing market is rock solid.
It's a time bomb.
When someone's income is exaggerated, it's not doing them a favor because it just means they're going to have a house they can't really afford the payments on.
Exactly. Correct.
It was their duty as reviewers of the loan applications to sound the alarm, and they did so over and over again, they allege in a lawsuit, to their bosses and to B&C's parent company, Wall Street giant Lehman Brothers.
We would bring it to corporate office attention, and they started pushing us away, telling us to quit calling them and bothering them.
Sharyl McNeil claims in the lawsuit higher-ups retaliated by steering work to other employees.
I was closing like 25, 30 loans a month, and that's really good. When I started finding the fraud in the file and questioning it, the branch manager started retaliating against me. And because I was finding the fraud, then he started taking the files back slowly and giving it to another account manager.
Does that affect your income? Are you
It affects my income. It affects my production. Management starts looking at me because my numbers are going down. Each time I complained, nothing happened. Then you just get this feeling like it's not right.
I remember at one point just actually thinking, why on earth? I just cannot believe they are allowing this to happen. These people are not going to be able to make the payments on these homes. This is not good for the company in the long run. It's not good for the homeowners in the long run. And then it clicked, oh, they don't care. It's greed, it's the bottom line. If they closed 10 million last month, let's do 15 million this month. And if you can't do it, you're out.
Too many people in the mortgage industry were getting rich off the questionable loans. The women say the more they resisted what they saw as fraud, the more insistent their superiors became.
So you guys were made into the bad guy when you were actually trying to help the company and the people and flag the fraud.
Yes, we were the troublemakers.
But we thought we were protecting our company by sounding the alarms. We really thought that they would embrace us and be happy and like, oh, thank you. No.
With matters coming to a head, the women allege in their complaint BNC brought in a mysterious account manager named Daniel, who began stealing their files at night, they say, and harassing them mercilessly by day.
He walked past my office regularly with his hands in his pocket, simulating masturbation. I thought it was all in my mind.
We didn't know what Daniel's role was in the office. He just walked around stimulating masturbation. So one day I remember he just came over to my desk and he just scooted up against me, started breathing down my neck and made sexual references to me, like he would like to be with a black woman. He's just a really, really creepy guy.
We were unable to reach Daniel, who's a named defendant in the case. Lehman Brothers wouldn't agree to an interview or address claims about Daniel. In the past, the company has said it hired an outside investigator to review the women's complaints about fraud, but found no evidence BNC employees were slipping falsified documents into loan files. In the lawsuit, Weeks says a manager brushed off her concerns about Daniel.
I reported him. He did racial slurs to me. I reported those. And I said, this is what Daniel did. And he says, oh, well, we call him Chester the molester. And he dismissed it all.
Did you come to the conclusion that Daniel was sent there to harass you and make you uncomfortable so that you would leave?
Because when we even went to corporate office asking, who is this person and what is his position here? What does he do? We can't understand why he is here. And we were told, you know, basically not to worry about it and do your job and close your loans.
If the goal was to make the women quit, it worked. McNeil was first to go.
What'd you say was the reason you were quitting?
Just couldn't take it anymore. You know, it wasn't a good environment. It wasn't good on my health, you know, and it was very, very stressful. Every day you would just cry because you didn't know what was going to be happening to you.
Weeks was soon behind her after a final close encounter with Daniel alleged in the lawsuit.
Daniel's in back of me with his hand on my shoulder, breathing down my neck, asking me, can he help me? And at the same time, he's pushing his genitals against my backside. Well, I lost it because I had a panic attack immediately. And I thought I screamed, but they tell me I didn't. They just saw me run out of the office.
By September of 2005, 6 women had resigned from BNC.
We refused to participate. We refused to turn a blind eye, and we have a conscience. I have a conscience. If I say that this is a good loan, I want it to be good for my company. More importantly, I want it to be good for the homeowner, and that's what got lost.
Before long, the ceiling began to collapse on the mortgage industry. Certainly not all foreclosures involved fraud, but here's one example of how homeowners got in way over their heads. In 2002, this California home sold for $301,000. In 2005, at the height of the bubble, it sold for more than double, and BNC financed the entire cost according to public records. By 2006, it was in foreclosure. BNC had made so many bad loans, Lehman Brothers shut it down in 2007 and then filed for bankruptcy protection itself in 2008. Just like the women had feared and warned about, the chickens had come home to roost.
And it was happening, and now look what it's done. It was almost surreal. It was like, this is really happening.
They sued Lehman Brothers, claiming wrongful termination, but the bankruptcy stalled their day in court. And so the very women who worked so hard to make sure people could keep their homes lost their own.
You become labeled as a whistleblower, and mortgage companies don't want to hire you because you're a risk. I wasn't able to find work, and that affected my whole life. I lost everything.
I lost my apartment, I lost my car. I wasn't able to, send my son off to college.
So the interesting thing is...
Gary William is the attorney representing the women in their lawsuit.
It sounds like these women were unknown players in The Big Short.
Well, they were, but nobody paid any attention to it. It's now been over 10 years, almost 11, and their cases have languished in the largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States.
In an appearance before Congress in 2008, former Lehman Brothers chairman Richard Fuld took responsibility for the collapse of Lehman Brothers and BNC, but denied misleading investors.
Your company is now bankrupt. Our economy is in a state of crisis, but you get to keep $480 million. I believe my cash compensation was close to $60 million, which you have indicated here, and I believe the amount that I took out of the company over and above that was, I believe, a little bit less than $250 million. Still a large number, though.
Today, Fuld is reported to have a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, and posh digs on Florida's Jupiter Island. His Sun Valley, Idaho estate sold at auction for $20 million.
They still have their vacation homes. Nothing has been upset for them. They're not being punished. We have been punished. We are still being punished. So I don't see why they should get off the hook when we try to help them. This was the most devastating thing that could have happened to a great country such as this. It brought us to our knees. It collapsed our financial structure. They just wrote a whole new book and have been allowed to operate out of it. So I think it's unfair.
Today, the country is recovering from the recession, and the women are hoping to reach a settlement with what's left of a liquidated Lehman Brothers. But life has taken a permanent turn.
It's devastated me. My self-esteem. I used to be a very competent, resourceful, and good underwriter, and I just don't have the confidence anymore. I can't remember how the strength of that person that I used to be is gone. It's so devastating, and people don't really realize, but to know her before and to know her now and to hear her say that, it's kind of painful. It's very painful because it's so unfair. It makes no sense to us.
Lehman Brothers still negotiating debts, and bankruptcy court has said in the past that it denies the women's complaints and intended to fight them. So far, settlement talks in the case have been unsuccessful. Since 9/11, U.S. taxpayers have spent $115 billion to help rebuild Afghanistan. And rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in that spending is John Sopko, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. In one probe, he found our military wildly overspent to build an Afghan gas station. But Sopko's aggressive investigations have made a growing list of enemies among those he polices, who are now trying to discredit his work and targeting the watchdog.
Part of this was to develop a market in Afghanistan for compressed natural gas automobiles.
John Sopko is talking about this $43 million compressed natural gas station in Afghanistan. Impractical and overpriced, he found, by about $42.5 million.
They really didn't do any market survey. They really didn't see if there was enough liquefied natural gas or compressed natural gas.
It's one of the most notorious boondoggles Sopko has uncovered as the Inspector General policing the billions of U.S. tax money spent to rebuild Afghanistan. He's shown here on a recent inspection in Kabul. The gas station, it turns out, was the brainstorm of an arcane federal agency, the Defense Department's Task Force on Business and Stability Operations, or TFBSO. It spent an astounding $800 million American tax dollars over 5 years to kickstart the Afghan economy.
We received more allegations about TFBSO than we have about any other government entity. We heard allegations that they didn't do any due diligence, they wasted the money, and basically the program didn't succeed.
Appointed by President Obama, Sopko, a former mafia prosecutor, is widely considered an effective watchdog of a government culture resistant to oversight, which may be why he's now been targeted by efforts to discredit him and his work. One sign came earlier this year. On the eve of a congressional hearing about the gas station, the Defense Department gave Congress and select reporters entirely new figures on the supposed cost and suggested Sopko's team had it all wrong.
The night before, the Defense Department said, oh, by the way, all that data is wrong, which it may have been, but we got it from them.
At the hearing, the Defense Department's Brian McKeon claimed the true cost of their military-funded gas station was far less than $43 million. As proof, he referred to a new memo supposedly written by military consultant Robert Shraven.
The consulting firm that conducted the assessment has also reviewed its work, and we have seen a copy of their memo to the committee staff indicating the total costs of the station are likely well under $10 million.
And the hearing on government misspending suddenly seemed to put Inspector General Sopko, the IG, in the hot seat.
There are also some questions about the IG.
Senator Tim Kaine challenged Sopko's accounting methods and accused him of waffling on the gas station's price tag.
The fact that the IG is putting out material with two different numbers is something that I definitely want to dig into today and understand.
When you were sitting there and hearing the Defense Department redefining the numbers they had given you and in essence blaming your agency as if it was some dishonest broker, what was going through your mind?
Welcome to Washington. I've seen this before.
Sopko vigorously defended his work.
And I would remind all of the members, our requirement is to report the best number available. We don't make numbers up. In the end, whether it's 43 million or 20 million or 10 million, it's still a lot more than should have been spent in Afghanistan.
So if they're now claiming it's wrong, well, then what's going on with your record keeping?
I watched that hearing, and to me it was remarkable. They made it look like you were the guy that got everything wrong, that you had some axe to grind.
But I felt certain we had the right numbers. We were right. As long as you're right, the truth will come out. And I think a number of members on the committee also realized that this was totally unfair and totally bogus.
Senator Claire McCaskill wasn't buying the military's new memo on the gas station's lower cost.
And the argument that's been put forth in the press that somehow the figures in this are not correct, I mean, frankly, all you did was fan the flames. You know, that somehow it wasn't 43 million when you can't even say where the 30 million went. This is a terrible waste of taxpayer money when we have so many other uses for it.
After the hearing, Sopko continued his investigation of TFBSO, and he remained in the crosshairs. Some in the press advanced the theme that he's overzealous and sloppy. Stories quoted anonymous critics of the federal agencies where he's found waste, fraud, and abuse.
This is a Politico article that I know you've seen that talked about you as if you were the guy that made all the mistakes.
Yeah, there was one where they referred to me as the Donald Trump of inspectors general.
Meaning what?
I think back then they thought it was a criticism, but in light of the election, it may not be a criticism.
Sopko's critics, usually quoted anonymously, appear to come from the ranks of those he's overseeing. One anonymous ex-military official told reporters, Sopko has turned his office into a cheap media operation that does real damage to due process and U.S. policy. None of the critics we contacted would speak with us for this report. Neil Gordon of the watchdog Project on Government Oversight says Sopko is exactly what the public needs.
Certainly Sopko is fairly aggressive, very outspoken, but we think that aggressiveness is important in Inspector General because they need to safeguard taxpayer money, in this case, tens of billions of dollars that have been spent in Afghanistan.
He says if the military is engaged in PR warfare to undermine Sopko, it's not the first time. In 2014, USA Today obtained inside evidence of an aggressive spin campaign by the military against Sopko. The plan of action reportedly involved the Pentagon going public to blunt Sopko's findings before he could release them.
It was likened to a duck hunt where they said that the military will be out in the field bagging its share of ducks while Sopko was still waking up and putting his boots on.
There are lots of reasons why federal agencies and contractors would be unhappy with Sopko's work. He exposed $150 million tax dollars spent on luxury villas in Afghanistan to house a handful of workers who could have lived at a military base or the embassy for next to nothing. He uncovered $36 million wasted on a giant U.S. military headquarters in Afghanistan that generals on the ground said they didn't want or need. And he unearthed $600 million spent on a fleet of Afghan airplanes that never flew and were scrapped for pennies on the pound. As Sopko continued his probe into the overpriced, military-funded gas station, he discovered a new surprise. Shraven, the military consultant whose name was on the memo the Defense Department gave Congress, claiming the gas station really didn't cost that much, said he didn't write the memo.
We took a look at it, and we actually talked to the person who allegedly, I say allegedly, wrote the report, and the person denied authoring it. We didn't really find out who did author that report. But, you know, nobody likes an IG who is trying to find out the truth. I would say nobody. There are a lot of people in town who don't like it because a lot of people in town made their careers or made a lot of money on some of these stupid programs.
Sopko says he now has a host of new questions about TFBSO.
We have now been asked by Senator Grassley and Senator Ayotte and others to do a full-blown audit of the entire $800 million program. And what we are basically finding is the records are horrible. They didn't keep records. And so we're finding waste, fraud, and probably abuse throughout the program.
As for that compressed natural gas station,
no cost-benefit analysis, no sustainability analysis, a program that's dumb on its face. The average person in Afghanistan, their annual income is $690. It costs $800 to convert a car to natural gas. Now, did anybody in the room sit there and say, is there anybody in Afghanistan that can afford this?
Inspectors generals are nonpartisan. I was appointed by President Obama to ferret out fraud, waste, and abuse. And I will continue doing that job under President Trump. The way I view it is, fraud is not Republican or Democrat, it's not red or blue, we're talking about green. You know, I'm here to protect the taxpayers' green, the taxpayers' money, and we'll continue doing that.
It's worth reiterating that we reached out to the Pentagon and multiple Sopko critics who appear to be linked to military contractors, but they declined to be interviewed for our report. As for the allegedly forged memo the Pentagon presented to Congress, revising the price tag of the Afghan gas station, the Pentagon would only say it stands by the testimony it gave.